Hello and welcome to Pockenrop. This video is my brand new ranking of Paul McCartney albums with a massive twist. So over the last few weeks and indeed years, I've been doing reimagineds of Paul McCartney post-Beatles solo albums. I have just finished off and published yesterday the Egypt Station one. And what I'm going to do now is a ranking as if those were the real Paul McCartney post-Beatles solo albums. Couple of caveats before I go into this. I'm not including the covers album, so that's no Russian album, Run Devil Run or Kisses on the Bottom. And included alongside those are the albums that didn't get changed in any way, either because there wasn't enough material to warrant it, in the case of something like Wings at the Speed of Sound, or that they just didn't need it, like, say, Band on the Run or Ram. In terms of how I am scoring them, because I'm going to give them a score as I go along, I'm taking into account how much I now like the album, and indeed how proud I am of the changes that I made to it, as well as the quality of the material. There are 22 albums to consider now, and starting at 22, Driving Grain, which I've given 3.3 out of 5. And I massively prefer my version of Driving Grain, but I had to include material that I still thought was a bit iffy. And I had to include a cover version to kind of bulk the album out a bit. A great cover version in the Ian Dury song, Partial to Your Abracadabra. But it cements my view that Driving Rain is his worst album of all original material. Because even with a double's worth and a few extra bits, it's still the weakest in this ranking. At number 21, Peace Street. The 83-84 album that I bodged together from Pipes of Peace, Give My Regards to Broad Street, and additional material. This I've given 3.6, so there's quite a significant step up. I think it's a really good listen, and the presence of On the Wings of the Nightingale in particular could have potentially pushed it higher. And number 20, McCartney 2, which I've given again 3.6. It's one of those albums that, generally speaking, the material in and around the area, I don't love the electronic experimental stuff, but I do think the whole idea of a weird side and a normal side makes this album work so much better, and that too, 3.6. Step up now to number 19, Wings at the Speed of Sound, 3.8. There was nothing around that I could really do anything with. At number 18, Impressed to Play. Now, this is a 3.8, which I think is a big step up as a whole from the basic album, which I'd probably put at 2.5 to 3. I think it's right there in the middle of average territory. The formal inclusion of those B-sides that are on the CD with some editing and changes, things like Angry, the Laurie Alexander remix, total resequencing, and the removal of its title track, 3.8 for Impressed to Play. Number 17, McCartney 3. It's 4 out of 5. It is a 4 out of 5 album and always has been. 16, Venus and Mars. Ever so slightly better. I've given that 4.2. 15, McCartney, the debut, 4.3. 14, we're back into the ReImagineds for Red Rose Raceway. And I genuinely think that this is a better listen. I've given it 4.4. And there were times when I think, did I get it wrong? But actually, when I listened back to it, I thought, I find this a much more engaging album to listen to than the original Red Rose Speedway. The inclusion of stuff like I Would Only Smile and Mama's Little Girl and the ditching of Loop and My Love, make Red Rose Raceway a really good album. Number 13, Over the Ground, which I've rated as also 4.4. And this is a common McCartney project where people look at the complete works of Off the Ground and make their own versions of it and argue about what should have been included. But I think virtually all of us say Long Leather Coat over Looking for Changes, and you still have the same inclusion of an Animal Rights song, but it's such a good Animal Rights song. transforms the album. And I again, I really like this. It's my number 13. Number 12, one of the ones where I think, did I go and cut and change too much? And it was Fresher Flowers. And it includes all the things that I think were brilliant about Flowers in the Dirt and give it a free pass. And then a whole load of stuff that, some of which hasn't been released, like Lindiana and Return to Pepperland, that make Flowers in the Dirt or Fresher Flowers a 4.4. Number 11, Memory Reformatted, one of the most recent ones I've done on this channel. Memory Almost Full is a 3.5er as an album for me. I know people love it. They think it's an absolute masterpiece. I've never got it. It raises from a 3.5 to say a 3.8, 3.9 when you listen to the needle drop version, which changes the brick wall production. But when you ditch the two problematic songs, for me anyway, Nod Your Head and Gratitude, and put in Private and Why So Blue, it's a 4.6. It totally elevates the album and it becomes almost the masterpiece that other people think it is. So that's halfway through. I've got the top 10 to go. Before I do that, I'd remind you to subscribe if you've not already done so. To like the video by clicking the thumbs up, it helps with YouTube algorithms. To click the bell to receive notifications of future content, which will include another McCartney album ranking at the end of this week on the day of the release of The Boys of Dungeon Lane. And to share the video with someone else who might like it. So into the top 10. At number 10, Water Wings. I've given this 4.6. Waterspout, Girls' School, the ditching of some of the not recorded by the full 5-piece Wings lineup material changes this album so much. And Water Wings, if that had been what came out, go back and watch it to see my track listing, would have been another McCartney masterpiece. 4.6, my number 10. Number 9, when I did my, not the most recent video, but the one before it, I did a double header of Memory Almost Full and Even Newer. And Even Newer, I think probably I could have stood alone, because I didn't realise I'd made 4 track changes to it and totally resequenced it. And I listened to the CD of it again recently, and I thought, this is stonking. I've given it 4.6, the same as I have for Water Wings, but Even Newer, the Hope for the Future thrash mix alone makes this a stellar record. And number 7, 4.6 for All the Way to Egypt. So this was my most recent video, turning Egypt Station into a formal double album, with including all of the material, resequencing it so that I think it makes sense better, ditching For You, which still causes toe-curling moments when I listen to it, not including Get Enough, which I can't stand, but am including the Nothing for Free. It's not completely Greg Kurstin production. It does still have a Ryan Tedder track on it, but it's such a good one. That's 4.6, as is my number 7, which is Pie Charts. This is the stripped down, remove the jams, and If You Wanna from Flaming Pie, pop in Broomstick, resequence it. Perfect album almost. At number 6, with 4.7, the thing that I created that actually kind of started this whole thing, that I actually did the first CD I made, and it's Back to the Hard-Boiled Egg. Back to the Egg's a mess. This is still a bit of a mess, but it's a much more enjoyable mess. There's wholesale changes, there's wholesale additional inclusions, there's a massive restructuring of the album, and yes, you lose stuff like Reception. But one thing I did, if you go back and watch that video, I forgot to mention that my version of Back to the Hard-Boiled Egg has Getting Closer on it, but not Getting Closer as you know it. It's Getting Closer, where half of the lyrics are sung by Denny, and they're different and better. And so all of that, all of the inclusion of Daytime, Nighttime Suffering and Good Night Tonight make Back to the Hard-Boiled Egg an absolutely great album. And it's 4.6. Into my top 5. At number 5, I've placed this as high as I have with 4.7 because of how proud I am about what I did to it. And it's Wilder Life. Wildlife is way down at the bottom of my rankings. It's usually like a 2 out of 5 star wise. I don't think it's completely without merit, but the shortening of so many tracks, the inclusion of a load of additional stuff that was around at the time, especially Sunshine Sometime, whether that be the instrumental or the lyrical version, makes Wilder Life a 4.7, a near classic perfect album that, had that been released, perhaps the trajectory of Wings would have been very, very different. It's absolutely one. It's my favourite of all of my reimagineds. It's the one I go back to the most, and every time I put it on, even the shortened mumbo, I think this is great stuff. Absolutely great stuff. Number 4, Chaos and Creation in the Backyard. I gave it 4.8 because I think it is almost a perfect album. Number 3, Ram. It's a perfect album. 5 out of 5. 2, Tug of War Alternative. Now, I think Tug of War, had I not, if I'd have not actually done the slightly changed version of Tug of War, I would have probably had this just behind Chaos and Creation in the Backyard. We'll find out when I do my proper ranking at the end of this week. But as it is, with those couple of changes, it becomes a 5-star perfect album, Tug of War Alternative. Which leaves at number 1, Band on the Run, 5-star album. So that is it. That is my unique, nobody else will ever do this ranking of Paul McCartney post-Beatles studio albums, including my ReImagineds. I'll be back at the end of the week with my review of The Boys of Dungeon Lane. I'm really looking forward to this record. I'm going to do a fast McCartney ranking where I run through all of his albums, including those covers albums, as they are, not as I would wish them to be. And when I get to my placing for Boys of Dungeon Lane, I will review my thoughts about it. So, back by the end of the week. This is all part of my McCartney May, leading up to the release of that record. I will see you at the end of the week. Thanks for watching.